Now, he does breakfast radio in Adelaide. He writes for News Corp and The Australian. He runs around after a clutch of kids as well. But David Penberthy has also got time to catch up with us each week. Great to talk to you, Pembo. And you've even squeezed in a visit to the dentist today. You reckon you might be a little bit mumbly?
I almost didn't make it, Chris. So if I sound like I've been at one of those old-fashioned long journalistic lunches, I can blame 2.5 hours of violent dentistry for that. But no, to coin an old phrase, the Kenny show must go on.
Well said, well said. And that's not a bad ruse, you know, but people might catch on if you have to say you've been to the dentist every Thursday. Hey,
that's right.
Tell me, ScoMo, he's had a pretty rough start to the election year, hasn't he? Especially in his treatment at the hands of the media.
Yeah, I actually watched that National Press Club address very closely, and the journo in me was thinking a lot of these questions are valid, but the tone of it and the sort of cumulative effect of the PVO question about the text message, and then the Andrew Clennell question about the loaf of bread, which is, you know, an absolute sort of gimme question. I think the Prime Minister should have definitely seen that one coming. But it's interesting working in talkback radio because we get unsolicited text messages from our largely suburban audience, and they're not people who are politically obsessed. They're not people who spend their lives on Twitter searching the Ozpol hashtag and taking part in social media pile-ons about the different issue du jour that fires people up in that space. And I reckon most of the messages we had about the National Press Club were bagging journos. There were quite a few bagging ScoMo, and a lot of people, I think, for him, the bigger danger is that he hasn't looked like a strong leader, and he hasn't been able to look like a strong leader because the states have been calling the shots.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't look strong, I think a lot of people regard him as expendable. You know, it's not like, you know, people would sort of rally the troops in fear of losing someone like a John Howard or a Bob Hawke. You know, I think the big danger for him is people feel like life wouldn't be any better or worse if Scott Morrison wasn't the Prime Minister. Yeah, that's a pretty good bit of analysis, and partly because of his own introduction of the National Cabinet, he's almost made himself expendable. But he's obviously looking to sort of reintroduce himself to the Australian public because he's done a profile with 60 Minutes. We haven't seen it yet, but let's have a look at their promo that's out today.
Scott Morrison fights back.
You might need more than a miracle this time. You might need the second coming.
Well, I believe in that too. On 60 Minutes, behind the scenes in the kitchen cabinet.
Watch out for the knives. Only from behind.
The Prime Minister launches his secret weapon.
I'm in. What would you say to your 16-year-old self?
Run!
But can Jenny Morrison swing the election?
I actually felt sick to my stomach.
And save her husband?
Then you can go to Hawaii.
Carl.
Too soon?
Too soon.
Too soon.
There you go. What do you reckon, Pembo? The missus as the secret weapon? That's a bit 1950s, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. It might resonate with some people, and you know, there's still a very large number of people out there who like the idea of coherent family units and so forth. But you know, I think he does need to cast the net a bit wider, and maybe it's partially because of his staff, but I think that there's probably been a bit of a siege mentality, and that people on the Conservative side of politics have spent too long almost defining themselves by the screeds of things that they see on Twitter, and they actually need to spend more time. They should almost ignore it, you know, because
absolutely,
Conservatives, if they use Twitter the right way, they can actually regard it almost as a holding pen for people who already agree with each other. You know, that's the whole vibe of Twitter. People are there to show that they're also pure and right on. There's not much agreeing to disagree happening on social media. So I actually think the more he goes on things like 5AA, like our station, he's only been on 3 times, I think, in the last 18 months. the National Press Club showed that he hasn't got many friends in that room. He's got to find them somewhere else. And by friends, I don't mean sycophants. I just mean people who are actually going to give him a fair hearing.
Yeah, and talk about the issues.
Gotcha questions about text.
Talk about the issues they're interested in. I mean, John Howard, you mentioned earlier, he was the master at using talkback radio, and he'd go on the tough ones as well, the ABC to get the attacks, and also some of the more supportive commercial radio. But that's. And I've had the conversations with him about that. Not only did that help him get messages out, he felt he got a lot of feedback himself because he was taking calls from your callers and the like. You get great insight into exactly what people are focused on.